Muhammed Shehada. He is the Chief of Communications at Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor and joins us live now from Copenhagen. Thank you for being with us on the program. Now, the ICC chief, as I mentioned, the chief prosecutor, he is at the Rafah crossing border assessing the situation there. How much pressure do you think this is going to put on Israel to comply with international law?
Well, it's very significant in a way. He talked about that the obstruction of humanitarian relief can be a crime that falls under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. So that's a very significant gesture or point to make. At the same time, his speech had a lot of shortfalls or some main remarkable issues where he talked very assertively about Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza having committed alleged war crimes. But when it came to the Israeli side, he was not as assertive or not as strong in his statement. He did not talk about concrete potential war crimes and crimes against humanity, such as cutting food, water, electricity, and medicine and communication. But he talked more of the general sense of these sort of polemics about the disheartening scenes of killed kids and the consequences of preventing food and water from coming through. But at the same time, what's more concerning is this sort of acquiescence, if not complicity, of the international community. So the European Union on the one hand and the US on the other, of giving Israel this carte blanche to proceed with the operation in the way that it's doing without any concrete pressure to actually alleviate and reduce the humanitarian crisis. It's not even crisis, it's now a humanitarian catastrophe. There's almost a total collapse of civil order and government capacity in Gaza. We see a lot of reports of people being unable to find drinking water and resorting to drinking contaminated and salt water even. So it's a humanitarian catastrophe without any significant push to reduce it, without any sort of red flags being drawn before Israel.
Let's look at the military aspects of this conflict. There are many challenges that come with subterranean warfare. And in this case, it's civilians that are paying the ultimate price. When it comes to this kind of warfare, what are regulations that need to be adhered to?
The three main principles are proportionality, refraining from use of excessive force, and distinction between civilian and military targets. Unfortunately, the quality and nature and magnitude, severity, scale of the Israeli airstrikes for the last 3 weeks speak to immense and blatant violations of these three principles. At the same time, one of the most concerning aspects of the Israeli potential invasion of Gaza would be that the Israeli military has, let's say, a twisted doctrine, military doctrine, in which they believe that the primacy of the lives of their soldiers come before the lives of Palestinian civilians, although that's not the case under international law. So this means that the Israeli military, in order to minimize, quote, the risks to their soldiers before they enter into any neighborhood, they have to extensively wipe it out methodically and extensively with artillery and aerial bombardment. That means catastrophe for Gaza in the long run. Most of these homes, you look at Gaza, the average GDP per capita is about $1,200 per year.
Right.
So these homes were built through generational hard work and labor. Entire families putting everything they have into these homes that Israel is now knocking one after the other.
Right.
So this leaves Gaza with an insane catastrophe afterwards.
It does indeed. And we do know that at least 1.5 million people are now displaced, most probably for the second time in their lives, of the 2.3 million people that are on the Gaza Strip. Muhammad, there are reports out of Gaza that new weapons are being tested there due to the severe burns people have from these attacks. Doctors have called on Israel to be transparent about the kind of weaponry that they're using so they can adequately treat these fourth-degree burns that they're seeing on their patients.
Precisely. We've seen a lot of documentation where the wounds inflicted by the Israeli weaponry are burning through the flesh and skin and exposing bones. That's the only thing that's very visible to doctors. You cannot treat such wounds. In many ways, we're also seeing wounds that would require constructive surgery for decades to come, especially for children. There's a medical doctor in Gaza, Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, a plastic surgeon from London, who says that this will require millions and millions of dollars and years of constant work on reconstructive surgery to give those people a normal life again. It's not just the kind of weaponry they are using, it's the scope and extent and magnitude of the attacks. So Israel is destroying entire neighborhoods, razing them completely, and not just in the north and in the allegedly and purportedly safe south, where we see entire neighborhoods gone, and we see high-rise residential buildings being wiped out completely, which again is a contradiction and violation of the principle of proportionality.
All right, the Chief of Communications at Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor, Muhammed Shehada, thank you so much for being with us here on the NewsHour and sharing that analysis with us.